Hi, welcome to On This Day in Tudor History with me, Claire Ridgway, from a very bright sunny Spain. I can hardly see you. Oh well. Okay, where am I taking you back to today? Well, I'm taking you back to the reign of King Henry VIII. For on this day in Tudor history, the 5th of May 1543, religious radical Adam Damplip, also known as George Bucke, was hanged, drawn and quartered in Calais, which was an English territory at the time. Nothing is known of this Protestant martyr's early life, but he was in Padua in northern Italy in 1536 with Cardinal Pole, who became cardinal later that year. He also became close to Cosmo Gary, Bishop of Fano, who is about to write a biography of John Fisher, Bishop of Rochester, a Catholic Bishop of Rochester, who of course had been executed in London the previous year, 1535, for refusing to accept King Henry VIII as the supreme head of the church in England. Bucke claimed to have served Fisher as a priest and told of how after Fisher had been imprisoned in the Tower of London, Bucke took the king's side against Fisher, but that after Fisher's death, his awful brutal death by execution, Bucke had had a vision in which Fisher confronted him about his desertion, and so Bucke had then repented following this awful vision. He then travelled to Rome on a pilgrimage, and there Cosmo Gary had to intercede on his behalf after he killed a man. We don't know sort of any other details about that, but Cosmo Gary the bishop interceded on his behalf so he didn't get punished for it. By April 1538, he was in Calais, that English territory which is now in France, as Adam Damplip rather than George Bucke. On his way home, he was travelling to England. He was intending to go to England. But instead of taking the ship to England, he stayed in Calais preaching, although Cardinal Pole was actually sending him money to try and get him to go back to Rome. He was supported financially in Calais also by Arthur Plantagenet, Lord Lisle, who was deputy of Calais, who recommended Damplip to Thomas Cranmer, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and said that Damplip's sermons on the Book of Romans was the best he'd heard. Damplip was taken to England by a member of Lord Lisle's household, but he was being investigated, and Archbishop Cranmer warned him that he could well be imprisoned after this investigation. Damplip wrote a statement on his religious opinions, and he was eventually able to return safely to Calais. However, in 1539, it was alleged that he was preaching against the sacrament of the altar, the Eucharist, and also preaching against baptism, and this was heresy. In 1540, a royal commission went to Calais to investigate, and they found that Damplip, with his preaching, was causing division amongst the people there. On the 22nd of July 1540, Damplip was attainted for treason for his correspondence with traitor Cardinal Pole. He was imprisoned in London's Marshalsea prison, and after Easter 1543, he was released and sent back to Calais on the 2nd of May, but he wasn't released to enjoy his freedom. He was released to be sent back to Calais to be executed. On the 5th of May 1543, Damplip was hanged, drawn and quartered as a traitor for accepting money from Cardinal Pole rather than being executed as a heretic, which you'd expect seeing as he was being investigated for heresy. Martyrologist John Fox explains, the cause which first they laid to his charge was for heresy, but because by an act of Parliament all such offences done before a certain date were pardoned, through which act he could not be burned with anything that he had preached or taught before, yet for the receiving of the foresaid French crown of Cardinal Pole, as you heard before, he was condemned of treason, and in Calais cruelly put to death, being drawn, hanged and quartered. So they couldn't get rid of this man Damplip, who was causing trouble and division in Calais for heresy, but he needed to be got rid of. So they picked his link to the king's enemy, Cardinal Pole, because he'd been financially supported by Cardinal Pole. Clever on the crown's part, but rather nasty, don't you think? Also on this day in Tudor history, the 5th of May 1542, so also in King Henry VIII's reign, just under 3 months after the execution of her step-granddaughter, Queen Catherine Howard, Agnes Tilney, the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk, was pardoned and released from the Tower of London. You can find out how she ended up in the Tower and what's happened in last year's video, which I'll give you a link to in the description for this video. And in 1536, in the lead up to Queen Anne Boleyn's execution, there were 8 prisoners by now in the Tower of London, the Queen and 7 men. And you can find out more about them in my video for the 5th of May 1536, which I'll give you a link to as well. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you've enjoyed seeing sunny Spain, my roof terrace here. You can subscribe by clicking around about there. You can hit the bell to be notified as these videos go live, and you can, of course, give me a like for the sunshine and leave a comment. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.